Okay, so when we finished class, we were talking about what is groundwater. So we just need to finish that part up and then move on to the carbon and oxygen and nitrogen cycles. So what is groundwater? Well, it infiltrates into the soil. So it's called infiltration. It runs through the rock and the soil, and this water is used to grow plants. There's also the water table. And now this is the very top of the groundwater. So the water table is the very top of the groundwater, and water will bubble up where the water table meets land. So water will bubble up where the water table meets land. And this water can then flow into streams, rivers, and lakes. This water can flow into streams, rivers, and lakes, and that allows evaporation to start all over again because it starts to have a surface area. It's not underground. And then you can see a diagram of where you have the land, then you have the water table underground. Okay, that's the very top of the groundwater, and then you can see the area of groundwater. You might want to make a sketch in your Cornell notes that shows this. And if you need to pause or rewind, feel free to do that throughout this online recorded lesson. But we're going to move on then to the carbon cycle, the oxygen cycle, and the nitrogen cycle. So what is the carbon cycle? So in the carbon cycle, producers take in carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. We know that plants, algae, and some bacteria, those are the producers, and they need carbon dioxide to perform photosynthesis. That CO2, or carbon dioxide, is used to make food molecules, and those food molecules can be sugars or starches. And consumers eat those producers, and then they're able to take in that carbon from the food molecules. So the starches, you might think of those as carbs. Even if you're eating pizza, you're getting the carbon element from that food because wheat is a plant and wheat makes flour and flour makes pizza dough. Now, you as a consumer break down the food molecules to get energy. And because you're breaking down those food molecules to get that energy, you have some waste products. And carbon dioxide and water are then released as waste products. So that's why we breathe out carbon dioxide. It's because we're breaking down the food that has carbon in it. And when consumers and producers die, decomposers break down remains and then return carbon to the soil. So when consumers and producers die, decomposers break down remains and return the carbon to the soil. Just like we talked about in the food web and food chain unit, we know that at the end of every food web, there are decomposers that break down those elements and release them into the soil. Same thing happens in that carbon cycle. Now, what is the oxygen cycle? Okay. During transpiration, producers release oxygen as a waste. Now, transpiration we said was plant sweat. So when they get rid of their waste, one of the producers' waste would be oxygen, as plants release the oxygen that we need. And because most organisms take in oxygen from the air or water, we use that to carry out our life processes. So we need the oxygen that the plants release so we can carry out our life processes. And again, we learn from the carbon cycle, we then breathe out carbon dioxide, and we know that those producers need the carbon dioxide. Then what is the nitrogen cycle? Nitrogen is in the soil and it's broken down by a bacteria. Free nitrogen is released in the air. And then it goes back into the soil, but the nodules on the roots of plants Sticks that free nitrogen to be usable by plants. So plants can't just use regular nitrogen by itself, like we can breathe in oxygen. It has to be in a fixed form to be used. So then consumers eat nitrogen from plants. And when consumers die, they decompose and that nitrogen gets back into the soil. And then it's released again. And that is the nitrogen cycle.